I've been looking forward to this for so long now in eager anticipation. So thank you so much for joining us today, the 12th of September 2023, as we launch this Building an Enterprise Level System with Xero series. I can see everyone streaming through. Great to see so many of you in attendance this morning. Just a few housekeeping points whilst everyone filters through. You'll see the Q&A function at the bottom. So that's where you can post any and all questions that you have. Plan is to pick up those at the end of today's session. And our plan for today, so very shortly, we're going to do intros with myself and each of our panelists. I'm going to spend a couple of minutes framing the series. We're then going to head over to Alex, the UK and EMEA MD from Xero, who we're thrilled to have joining us this morning, to provide some context from his side. And then we'll get into our discussion around building an enterprise level system with Xero. And then I will provide some information about what's coming up over the next 2.5 weeks as we cover all of the different bases of this series. But yeah, without further ado, let's get into it. So for those who don't know me, my name is David Tuck. I am the co-founder and CEO here at Mayday. And our mission is to mend month end, starting with the needs of multi-entity businesses. I'm an accountant by training. I've twice been a Xero using finance leader of multi-entity groups. And really with this series, it's trying to sort of create the resource that I wish I'd had as an in-house finance leader scaling with Xero. I have been an accounting tech entrepreneur for the last decade now. I was previously the founder and CEO of Chaser, the accounts receivable software, and have been building Mayday with Griff, my co-founder, and our team for the last couple of years. But that is enough about me. I'm going to hand over first to Alex, then to Kat, then to Joe to give, please, just the intros about yourselves.
Great. David, thank you very much. And thank you very much for the invitation. You very humbly forgot to say that you are an award-winning app ecosystem partner at Xero as well. And so congratulations to you and your team on that. Yeah, listen, I'm Alex Schirmeister. I'm the MD for Xero in the UK and EMEA. Maybe a bit of quick background on me and more important on Xero. I've been with the company for almost 2 years, not an accountant by trade. However, for over 20 years involved in softwares being sold to small and medium enterprises to help enterprises thrive, either in the payment space, in the e-commerce space, and then obviously now in the accounting space. Look, in terms of just a quick introduction to Xero, Xero was founded 17 years ago in New Zealand by Rod Drury, expanded internationally very, very quickly. So 17 years ago in New Zealand, 15 years ago, it came to the UK. And at the time, very much as a premise of it's cloud accounting software. And we are still very much a cloud software company at the heart. But the reality is when you start thinking of cloud accounting software, the reality is what accounting means and of what businesses need very, very quickly just starts growing. And obviously, even though at the very, very heart of Xero, we still have kind of the Xero core product, which is a bookkeeping product. Businesses need compliance solutions. They need receivables and payable solutions. They need bank reconciliations. They need payroll products. They need reporting and analytics, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so what has really happened over the years is Xero has kind of started building out two things at the same time. On the one hand, we have built and continue building Xero products that are complementary to our bookkeeping and compliance product. There's a Xero payroll product. We have Xero data capture products that either are targeted to accounting and bookkeeping practices or to small and medium enterprises themselves. But at the same time, we also very quickly realized that there are just too many nuances and permutations of different types of businesses either because of regulation of different countries or just because of the nature of the sectors they are in, or because of the specific needs they have. There are just too many permutations and nuances for any one single software to ever be able to satisfy. And so very early in the history of Xero, we threw open our APIs and we invited external developers to develop against the Xero APIs, and basically created the birth of the app ecosystem that Xero has today. So if you go to Xero App Store, you'll find over 1,000 different apps, and they will go anywhere from better and more beautiful reporting or analytics. It will be anything in regards to treasury and chasing invoices, for example. It will certainly be very topical nowadays, anything around carbon footprint accounting, and kind of some of the ESG requirements. And then increasingly also services that are really aimed not at the small business, but kind of more to the medium and then larger enterprise, in terms of certainly the conversation we're going to have today, for example, around multi-entity accounting. And the reality is that it's been a really, really critical component of us to offer a small business solution with Xero at the core, but also making sure that we enable an ecosystem which, through this just multitude of innovations and multitude of great ecosystem partners, allows companies of many sizes to use Xero and continue using Xero way into its growth phase, as kind of, if you will, the heart of some of their operations. So as I said, we've been in the UK for 15 years, growing quite nicely, and we still to this day are very committed to serving accounting and bookkeeping practices, as well as then some of the businesses directly. So that's it for an introduction, and then obviously, am I passing on to Joe or to Kat, to David, or am I passing on to you?
To Kat, please.
Excellent.
Thank you so much, Alex.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thanks, David, for asking me along. I am really excited to be part of this series. So I'm Kat Wellum-Kent. I'm the founder of Fractional Finance, which is a relatively new business we started at the beginning of this year. After working in practice for 20-ish years, I could see that there was a gap where rapidly growing and scaling businesses were struggling to get the finance support that they needed. So that's the kind of the reason behind Fractional Finance. Here we provide a complete finance team to businesses on a fractional basis. So it gives them all the benefits of having experienced finance professionals in their business, but it allows with a model that kind of works for them given their objective size and trajectory. And a lot of the clients that we work with are kind of the larger businesses that are scaling, that have got Xero or maybe looking at different software. So this whole series is really kind of nicely aligned with the clients that we work with.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Kat. And Joe, over to you.
Joe Newbold. Welcome, everybody. Pleased to have you here. Portfolio fractional FD for startups, growth businesses. I've probably worked in or with 80 to 90 companies in my career so far. Many of those have been finance transformation, automation, month-end processes. Every business I've worked in has had their month-end completed in 5 days, eventually. Specializing in the Xero app ecosystem. There are over 1,000 apps in the Xero marketplace, and there are even more that aren't on the Xero marketplace. Specifically, if you start looking at e-commerce, Shopify, open banking apps that can really help finance directors with automating cash flow transactions, and everything else. For me, it's about providing business owners with the tools they need to answer questions immediately. Whether you have a finance person in-house, or whether you use your accountant, or whether you use a facility like Kat's, waiting 1-2 days for an answer, 3 or 3 days from a finance person when you need to make decisions for your business is crazy, given the advancements in technology and apps and all of the partners and everything that's available with Xero and its vast ecosystem. You should have, and there are the tools to hand, that means you can run your business now very efficiently from a finance perspective. So that's kind of it from me.
Amazing.
And
Well,
we'll
thank
talk
you
more
so
about
much.
what's out there in a minute, I guess.
We will indeed. Well, thank you so much, everyone. We're really privileged to have you sharing your insights today. I'm just going to spend a couple of minutes now framing the series, and then we'll get into the discussion. So in terms of us at Mayday, we're for larger Xero users. You know, the majority of our customers have in-house finance teams. And what we found was that they had two recurring questions. Is Xero still the right system for me as a grown-up business? And if the answer is yes, how long is that the case? Indefinitely, or when will the point be that I need to move? And we identified there's an unmet need there. And the nature of uncertainty is that when we don't know something, it leads us to act earlier than we might otherwise do. Stories abound of the horrible and hectic, as one of our customers described it, move to ERP. It's very expensive. You're looking at the same again in kind of year one subscription fees and consulting fees to implement, and 58% of ERP implementations fail. So we came up with this idea of what we've taken to calling ER peace of mind. The idea of the peace of mind of knowing, you know, how long and whether I can scale with Xero as my accounting system. This system is very much framed from the standpoint of how can we be useful to our target customer. It is very much not product marketing. This is not about how to build a best-in-class app stack and what the solutions are. This is the how an app stack can help you scale to a particular level, much more conceptual than that. And there is a reason I am not in a Mayday t-shirt today for that very reason. What we're trying to do here is writing the misconception that a business can't, as Alex talks about, you know, move into their growth phase with Xero. We want to write that misconception, but equally, it's really important that we don't overcorrect. We don't want to replace one myth with another. There will be times where it is right for a business to move on from Xero. And so it's very important that we get across that kind of balanced perspective. So for example, there are transaction limit guidelines that are posted on the Xero developer portal that I know we have as the next slide. Those limits are posted there. That everyone can see. You know, people talk about access rights, the need for kind of local tax requirements, you know, locking particular modules as part of month-end close. You know, those are things that have come up in our research. So our goal with this series is to provide the initial attempt at filling that gap to answer those questions. Is Xero still the right system for me? And if yes, how long will that be the case for? We've been absolutely thrilled with the response to have more than 600 registrants for the series. So thank you so much for joining us. And now I'm really excited to get into the discussion with Kat, Joe, and Alex. So Kat, coming to you first. Love to hear, like, you know, the success stories that you've been involved in of businesses that have scaled with Xero. If you could tell us a bit about the business and their characteristics.
Yeah, sure. So in kind of thinking about this session, I thought it would be better to kind of dive a little bit deeper on one, just so you can kind of get a bit of a feel for one of the businesses. So one of the clients I've been working with recently. So it was founded by a couple of serial entrepreneurs. They've built and sold a number of businesses in the tech space. And they're in the process of 3 years into a company that they're building at the moment with a view to exit in 10 years' time for about 100 million. They are a SaaS consultancy business that's linked to the Microsoft ecosystem. And they are about turnover about 3.5 million. So the rough plan is grow 1 million a year, 10 years, and then exit. And when I've been working with them, they are based on Xero, and it's working well for them. They're relatively simple in terms of their business. They've got one entity at the moment, although that will grow as they expand geographically. Their business model is one where they have a low volume of high value transactions. But they had one particular pain point that we were working with them on in relation to their revenue recognition. They were doing a lot of quarterly invoicing or annual invoicing, and their solution at the moment was that someone in their team was going in and doing that kind of manual month-end journals to defer the revenue to the correct periods. because there's not an inbuilt functionality within Xero for that, which was fine based on where they were at the moment. But they were in the process of launching a lower value, high volume offering that was all about self-service. So they could see that how their current system was set up wouldn't work for them with this new revenue stream launching. And as they're part of the Microsoft ecosystem, they're like, well, we know Microsoft Dynamics, let's move to that. And we were just talking to them about this, and we were like, actually, that seems like it could be like a hammer to crack a nut. You've got one pain point there, and that's a whole big project. And even though they know Microsoft Dynamics really well, it would still take up a huge amount of their internal delivery time to put that system in. So we worked with them to understand what they needed, what their pain points might be in the future as well, because whilst at the moment they're one entity now, they were going to expand as they move into other countries internationally. So we looked at a number of different options and found something that integrates really well with Xero, that allows them to automate that revenue deferral journal each month, and also would allow them to do consolidated financial reporting when those other entities came in the future. So they've then implemented that, and it's saving them time based on their current revenue model. But once as they've launched the new product, it will continue to save them a lot of time. And I think that's a good example of one where I guess they didn't know any better. They just thought, well, because Xero can't do it how they expected it to be done, we need to move to an ERP system. And in that circumstance, I don't think it was right for them to make that move. It was just about finding what was the right app or suite of apps to support them to solve the problem that they had.
Fascinating. So an example there of sort of a single pain point that can lead to the misdiagnosis of, okay, that means Xero as a system is no longer for me, rather than seeing it's Xero plus ecosystem, I should be thinking about this. Fascinating, Kat. Thank you so much for sharing. Joe, over to you. Perhaps if you could share a success story of a business you've been involved with that's scaled with Xero.
Yeah, I think building on the singular pain point that Kat was talking about, I think in order to elaborate on that, it's very important to understand how we treat Xero and its ecosystem, right? Because scaling with Xero across the next 14 seminars, they will all be hosted by a particular piece of software along with David. There are many solutions to everything, right? Across those 1,000 apps. Yeah, supply chain management, you can go to 8 or 10 different inventory providers, for example. And the thing about Xero is it's very good as a double entry bookkeeping system. It gives you a P&L, it gives you a balance sheet. Its API is amazing. If you've got a custom built platform that you generate reverse charge invoices or self-billing invoices or customer invoices through that, the API is fantastic for Xero and you can pull everything in automatically. If you try and do things with it that it's not designed for, such as stock management, it has its limitations, right? You can't have multi-warehousing. You can't do more than, was it 1,000 SKUs or something earlier on, David, on the previous slide. Then that's when you will start to find your pain points. But that doesn't mean that you need to immediately think about moving to something else. The only examples where I've seen a business really needs to move is a very large manufacturing business, many number of SKUs, own manufacturing facility in Italy. They had kits, they had bombs, they had full production timelines, drop shipping, B2B, B2C, and that kind of thing. And then there may be circumstances where, for example, you have multi-jurisdictions where Xero is not native. And when I mean native, I mean automated filing to the relevant regulatory authorities. So if you look at Mexico and Germany, for example, in those countries, every company has to have a standard chart of accounts, right? Which is why they have their own solutions in those areas like Wolters Kluwer or something else. So there are very few occasions, and I even heard of a business running Xero when it was 200 to 250 million turnover, right? I'm not going to mention the name, but that is a fact. And then they only recently moved away from it. So you can scale with it very effectively if you know the ecosystem and all of the apps that are available to you. And if you're designing your own, your own back end and it contains all the data and everything else, then don't try and use Xero for something for which it was not primarily designed, because that's when you will start to find your pain points. It's a fantastic product within its area of specialisms. And then obviously if you need it to, if you need consolidations, for example, or multi-entity recharging and stuff like that, then you go to other solutions within the app environment, right? And then you can scale with Xero very effectively, because there are many apps out there, direct integrations with Xero, direct integrations with G Sheets, and you can pretty much do everything you want up to, tens of millions of turnover without too much pain if you talk to the right people and get them to design your tech stack, your data flows and your processes for you.
Amazing. I mean, I think there's been such rich insights coming out of this already. There's actually been a question come through that I think it's relevant to pick up here. What do we call a larger organization?
Well, the definition of SME is up to 50 million turnover. By the government definition, I think. So, an enterprise level system could be whatever you define it as. But I certainly wouldn't say, obviously no disrespect to anybody in the call, I certainly wouldn't say that a 1, 3, 5, 10 million pound organization is a larger business. And it's, unless you've got serious complexities that are not vanilla, then it would outgrow Xero at that kind of size. Definitely not.
I think just picking up on what Joe said there, I think it's difficult to define it in this context, because you could have a organization that is smaller in terms of revenue or transaction volumes or whatever, but it has a number of complexities in it that mean some of these challenges of using Xero we might not be able to solve them using Xero, and it needs to move to an ERP system earlier. Or it could be like Joe's example of the 250 million turnover business. I mean, that by all definitions, that's large, but that's working fine. So I don't think it's possible to kind of, be really definite on what meets that, what is a larger organization. It's about a number of different factors: revenue, number of transactions, complexities, number of entities, all those different factors that would lead to what type of system you need to use, what apps, whether you need to move to ERP, etc.
Fascinating. So sounds like what we got there is this idea of both sort of qualitative and quantitative factors. You've got hard limits in terms of transactions, but then you'll have kind of qualitative use cases, which is going to pull out the more complex needs where you need to look out into the ecosystem. Fantastic. Well, look, this time has just flown by, which has been a testament to how much insight there's been to share. I mean, I've just made a note here. I think, Joe, there was a point you made which really encapsulates for me that people should be thinking first, okay, I've got a growing pain here. It's not just what can Xero do. I should be looking at Xero plus the ecosystem in answering that question first before I then look beyond that. Kat, you had the phrase using a hammer to crack a nut, which can often be a trap that people fall into when they're growing with Xero. And Alex, you talked about the kind of the multitude of innovation within the ecosystem that Xero has cultivated from day one. So thank you so much for kind of sharing those stories. What I'd love to kind of ask you in summary is, what would be your prime advice to a business that is looking to answer those questions of, can I scale with Xero and how long can I scale for? So Alex, I might come to you first.
Yeah, look, I couldn't possibly have put it as eloquently as Kat and Joe did, right? I think they did an incredible job of describing what Xero does and what Xero doesn't do and what the ecosystem is like. And I think one of the challenges when you run a global software company is you always maintaining the balance between the stability and the security and the uptime of your software vis-a-vis the volumes that you're trying to transact on globally, right? We have almost 1 million businesses running Xero in the UK alone, over 3 million globally, and so that's always a balancing act. But that is where the ecosystem comes in. And so I think to your question, David, is there really isn't, the kind of one line or silver bullet answer, because it very much will depend on what it is that you think is stopping you. And I think both Kat and Joe touched on this notion of, it's not necessarily the size of the transaction, right? You can be a high value, low volume transaction. It really is the complexity of the transaction. I don't know if Joe was picking on me on purpose by mentioning both Mexico and Germany. I happen to be Mexican German. I don't know if you know that, Joe. So it was a
I had no idea about that, mate. I promise you.
No, that's fine. It was a great choice of countries. So the complexity really plays a factor, but that is precisely where the ecosystem comes in, right? More likely than not, companies that are purely designed to solve and fix that one pain point, right? And they will always do it way better than what we could possibly do. Companies have already thought of it and have come up with a solution, and they then plug into our ecosystem, right? And that's exactly what then allows you to extend the life of your utilization of Xero, and kind of avoids. I've done ERP implementations before. Trust me, I don't wish that on anybody. So the longer you can extend a full ERP implementation is certainly worthwhile. But it really comes down to try and identify the problem you're looking to solve, and see if there's someone in that ecosystem that can help you solve it.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Alex. Kat, over to you.
Yeah, I think just picking up on that last point that Alex said about finding the pain points, I think we've each talked about that, and I think that's definitely where you should be focusing, because it's really easy to become overwhelmed. I mean, everyone's mentioned 1,000 apps, then there's the ERP system. There's so many options out there that it's very easy to become overwhelmed by all the different systems that you could possibly use to solve the problem. So focusing on those pain points is key. But I'd also say it's not necessarily just focusing on the pain points that you're experiencing now, but looking to the future as well, and thinking about, okay, in 12 months' time, where's the business going to be? What solution can I put in place now that's going to help me in the future as well? You don't want to solve today's problem, because by the time that's implemented and running, you'll have another problem. So try and forward look and think about what's the right tool for where the business is going to be in kind of 6 to 12 months' time.
Quick, 2 things. David, could you skip back to the limit screen? Because we've got quite a few questions on people asking what the limits were.
Yeah, sure. I was going to wrap that up in the Q&A, Joe, if that's okay.
Yeah, no problems. All right.
So yeah, Joe, just like final bit of advice, and then I'll just kind of wrap up, preview what's to come over the coming 13 sessions, and then we'll dive into the Q&A.
Cool. Oh, you want final bit of advice from me?
Yes, please.
Right. I would say, this isn't meant to sound bad, but it might do, that if you are looking to enhance your ecosystem, make finance work for you as a business, then don't use your accountant, right? Even if they are platinum or gold approved Xero provider, often they don't have the time or the expertise or the knowledge of, over 1,000 apps. The reason Kat is now doing this on her own, and the reason, I've done it for many years, is because we have got fully ingrained now in the ecosystem, and we know what solutions work best. We don't just say, you want AP, for example, therefore use this one app, or you want reporting, therefore use this one app, right? A lot of accountants will have partnerships with certain app providers. So I would say, and all of these apps do different things for different people. So I would really say, go and find, a specialist that can navigate that for you, give you options, give you the best solution, and understand your business inside out.
Amazing. And I think, Joe, that picks up something that I was going to come to in the Q&A. You talked about right people before. There was a question from David Ballantyne in the Q&A, about how do we know where to look for the assistance in scaling up as a more sort of enterprise level Xero business. So thank you so much for touching on that. So I'm just going to preview very briefly what's coming up over the next 13 working days. So tomorrow we've got scaling your spending process around Xero. Then we've got reporting at group level, then leveling up your management reporting, and you'll see the links to register at the bottom there for each of the webinars. There'll also be the link at the end for the main site. Then we've got proactively manage currency risk, then manage complexity when scaling payroll, then manage complex manufacturing and inventory processes. Next up, optimize FX rates and automate reconciliation. Then we've got automate, enhance your accounts receivable. After that, plan effectively for every scenario, followed by speed up bill processing and make bulk payments. Next, scale approvals as a bigger team. And after that, unlock features for scaling businesses within Xero itself. And then finally, on Friday, the 29th of September, we've got automating multi-entity month end. So that is the veritable festival of insights that we have coming over the next 2.5 weeks. We're absolutely thrilled to see so many of you register for them, and really excited to deliver those sessions. I'm now going to switch into the Q&A. There's some brilliant questions that have come through on here that we'll try and get as many of them as possible. So there's a couple about the kind of the Xero limits. So if we could just go back to that slide so that we have that as the background. So that there's a few points here about what those limits were. It's important to stress these are guideline limits. So Tyler also, who's a speaker at our report, one of the speakers at our report at group level webinar, shared that I think large in terms of an organization is defined by invoice quantities per Xero file. We found that over 4,000 client invoices per month stopped the GST VAT report from running. So it's important to stress these are the sort of guideline transaction limits. You'll see the link to the Xero developer site if anyone wants to read more about those, and some great additional insight from Tyler there around his lived experience and what the impact those limits had. And then I'm just looking at the other questions that we had. So in terms of those kind of those limits, we've got a bunch about kind of invoices and bills here. We've got the sessions coming up, particularly around bill processing. So please be sure to tune into those because we will be diving deeper into them. And then just looking at the final questions that have come through here before we wrap up. Yeah, Simon pops through. And I think this is the great, this is a great example of how in some instances it may be a need to kind of move on. So Xero, like user access control. Oh, Joe's just answering on this. User access control, period control. That could be something that Simon talks about not having yet found an app to be able to address those. Joe, care to share what you're about to type so everyone can?
Yes. So there is some limited user access control, but it's not as extensive as 365, NetSuite, SAP, right, where you have 200 tick boxes and you can really customize users. Unfortunately, that's probably a limitation. Audit log, there's an audit log on a transactional level that's definitely been improved by Xero in the last couple of years. So it now tells you if values were edited, what date it was edited, if somebody added notes, etc. And there is a detailed audit log within the organization and settings that shows you when somebody last went in and what their activity was on a full basis. And with regards to period control, it's basic functionality, but it's there. So you can go into the periods and you can lock financial periods for all users and leave it open for advisors to post journals and stuff. That's kind of the only way it does. The one I'd say there's within, specifically on Simon's point there, within larger ERPs, they have a number of date markers. So tax point date, reporting date, and like entry date. Xero doesn't have that functionality. So if you lock a period, but you want to date a transaction in the previous period for tax purposes, because you may have to legally in that jurisdiction, but you actually want to record it in this period because you've already reported the previous period's results, Xero doesn't have that functionality, right? So that's a specific limitation of what it can't do. But I think that's the answer to those three.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Joe. And thanks everyone for some incredible questions that have come through there. If we haven't had a chance to answer your question, I know Kat, Alex, and Joe have both done sterling work in responding in the Q&A. So thank you very much for that. If we haven't had a chance to address your question, we will sort of make a note and field it to the relevant person accordingly. I'm gonna close by answering David's question about will there be a link to all sessions so that we can watch them again. That is very much the hope, that we can create content here with this series that you want to come back to, you want to share with your relevant team members. So yes, all of the sessions are being recorded and they will all be hosted after the session has taken place, and the series as a whole will be a content library that you'll be able to access afterwards, and we'll follow up via email to let you know just how to do that. So without further ado, that is the launch session wrapped up. Thank you so much to Joe, to Kat, and to Alex for the session today. It's been incredible to get your insights, and it's incredible to have the opportunity over the next 2.5 weeks to share our insights and share the insights of our collective panelists about how to build an enterprise level system with Xero. Thank you very much, everyone. I hope you have a great rest of the day. Thank you for joining.
Thank you, David.
Everyone.
Thanks, everybody.